Hello and welcome to the program UFO Warning. In this episode, we're talking about UFO reports over Oregon. That's correct, UFO reports over Oregon. I found these over at NUFORC.org. To my mind, just the best place possible to report a UFO sighting if you happen to have one, because they post all their stuff there, unlike some of the other reporting sites. They don't make a big secret about it. They just put it right out there in public for all of us to see, and I just think that's awesome. This first report comes to us from March 15th, 2026, 5:07 p.m. local time. Duration 1 to 2 minutes. There are two observers. It says military. Location Lincoln City, Oregon. Location details local casino parking lot. Shape orb, color gray silver. Size hard to establish. Viewed from land. Direction from viewer west. Angle of elevation 40 degrees. Closest distance hard to say. Estimated speed beyond normal aircraft speed. UFO over Lincoln City, Oregon. In the mid-afternoon of March 15th, 2026, this investigator interviewed an employee of a casino in Lincoln City, Oregon, regarding a strange object seen to the west by him and another employee. At about 5 p.m. that day, the witness I interviewed was driving through the casino parking lot when he came upon another employee he knew standing outside and looking west into the sky. After exiting his vehicle, he asked, "What's going on?" The other person replied, "Look at that object in the sky." Both men were observing a mysterious orb or oval-shaped object moving in an erratic manner. It was a cloudy day with little wind. The distance to the west where the object was hovering, approximately 40 degrees above the horizon, could not be established, nor could the size of the gray, dark silver object. The witness I interviewed was a former U.S. Army combat veteran whom I have known for 23 years. He confirmed to me that this was not a drone or any known aircraft. Its erratic maneuvering, observed for about 1 to 2 minutes, convinced both witnesses that this object was not a private, commercial, or military aircraft, especially when it suddenly bolted northward at an extremely high rate of speed and disappeared into the clouds. Based on the rate of acceleration, the initial witness confirmed to me that no human could withstand the G-forces involved in what he and the other witness observed, as the object darted away from a complete standstill in the sky. A photo was taken with a cell phone showing a round-shaped object to the best extent possible with zoom. At this time, the object is definitely unidentified. With current threats from a number of countries, it is possible it could be a military asset, but it is very difficult to say. Yeah, I'm not real big on thinking about these things being from other countries, although maybe if it's close to a military base or something from the Chinese or even the Russians. But when you're talking about things accelerating with the G-forces like that, hard to imagine that these things are man-made by any country. Anyway, very cool sighting. This sighting happened on February 20th, 2026, 5 a.m. local time. Duration 2 to 3 minutes. Observers 1. Location Mitchell, Oregon. Shape circle, color blue. Estimated size larger than a visible satellite viewed from land. Direction from viewer. Bright object was to the east. In the direction I was looking, approximately 500 to 1,000 objects moved from north to south directly overhead. Wow, that is a bunch. Now, north to south, that's really not typically what we'd expect there for satellites. Angle of elevation 90 degrees, closest distance higher than an airplane. Estimated speed comparable to satellite traveling speed. Characteristics: lights on object, animals reacted. Massive ship or a fleet. During my cattle monitoring shift from 2 a.m. to 7 a.m., I noticed an unusually bright star around 5 a.m. that immediately caught my attention. After getting out of my truck, I observed the star gradually dimming. The night was exceptionally clear with no clouds, and no visible moonlight. As I scanned the sky, trying to identify the object, I witnessed something extraordinary. I realized that every star directly above me was moving in a north to south direction. The object I was observing was as bright as a satellite, moving at a very high speed. I estimated there were approximately 500 to 1,000 such objects overhead, all clustered together in a formation. It is important to note that this was not Starlink, as I had seen that before. These objects were grouped closely together rather than forming a single line or being spaced apart. Every star above me appeared to be moving, except for a few stationary ones. The experience was incredibly intense and disorienting. I became frightened and tried to record the event with my phone. However, the original star that had first caught my attention began to brighten, and my phone suddenly lost all power. Before this happened, I had been listening to satellite radio in my truck, and it had been working normally. Because of that, I believe it is possible that either 500 to 1,000 small craft or one massive object with many lights passing overhead was responsible for what I saw. I watched the object continue traveling until it completely disappeared from view. The bright star that had initially drawn my attention slowly dimmed until it could no longer be seen. Suddenly, my phone displayed the Apple logo, indicating that it had restarted and powered back on. Whatever this was, it was not any type of aircraft with blinking or differently colored lights, and there was absolutely no sound. The bright object that was fading in and out remained stationary, like someone slowly turning down a dimmer switch on a light until it vanished completely. I have not told anyone about this experience except my father because I'm afraid of becoming the subject of ridicule in town. However, I am certain that this was not an aircraft or a satellite. I believe the initial bright light I mentioned, appearing like a very bright star, was observing me while something much larger, or possibly even a small fleet, was passing overhead. It somehow seemed to anticipate my attempt to record it and responded by completely shutting off my cell phone. Wow, that's a pretty intense encounter right there. And the fact that he's out there watching these cattle, there's a lot of connection between these UFOs and cattle's missing cattle mutilations, all that kind of stuff. Maybe this fellow was out there guarding the cattle herd and just happened to be in the way of some nefarious task this craft was up to. Hard to say. Very cool sighting, though. This sighting happened on November 22nd, 2025, 10:14 p.m. Duration 10 minutes. Observers 2. Location Altamont, Oregon, near Altamont Elementary. Shape orb, color blue, white, amber. Size 30 feet. Viewed from land. Direction from viewer in front of me. Angle of elevation 34 degrees. Closest distance 20 miles. Estimated speed 1,000 miles per hour. Lights on object or a haze around object changed color. A bright orb in the sky that changed colors. At 10:14 p.m., just past a quiet stretch of Summers Lane, a strange light appeared above the rooftops of Altamont. It began as a single white orb, brighter than any aircraft light, hovering completely still in the cold night air. Within seconds, the orb elongated into a narrow, glowing bar of light, then snapped back into a sphere as if the shape had been an illusion. The object drifted silently toward the open fields east of Altamont Elementary, moving with a smooth, gliding motion, unlike any helicopter or drone. As it passed over the neighborhood, the streetlights flickered. Dogs began barking in different directions as if confused about where the sound should be coming from, even though the object made no noise at all. The orb suddenly split into 3 smaller lights, each a different color, blue, white, and amber. They formed a perfect triangle, rotated in place, then shot upward at an impossible speed, leaving no trail behind. The entire event lasted 10 minutes, but the silence afterward felt heavy, as if the air itself had been disturbed. Ha, that is cool. Well, another one of these orb sightings, like I always say, just it's clear to me these things want to be seen. They're putting on some kind of a demonstration, some kind of a show out there. They have to be trying to communicate with us. That's all I can say. Either that or there's so many of them and they're just doing what they're doing, and they don't care if we see them or not. They're obviously not trying to hide. That's a cool sighting, though. This sighting is dated October 26, 2025, 3:30 p.m. local time. Duration approximately 15 to 20 minutes. Observers 1. Location Cornelius, Oregon. Details: backyard facing the highway, high in the sky. Shaped circle, color silver, white, viewed from land. Direction from viewer north. Angle of elevation 45 degrees. Speed 20 to 45 mile per hour. Possible explanation: balloon. Changed color: small silver oblong circular UAP turning into a white light and disappearing. I was in my backyard enjoying the crisp autumn air and watching the clouds roll by. There were not many clouds that day. As I looked up, I noticed a small silver oblong object floating upward in the sky. At first, I thought it was a balloon. As I continued to watch, I noticed the object was not moving with the gust of wind, nor was it continuing to move vertically. UFO then stopped midair and began moving slowly and horizontally across the sky, away from my location. I kept trying to figure out what the object could be. While I was watching, it shifted into a perfect circular shape, and its silver color changed into a bright white light. I stared at the white light for a good 5 minutes straight until an airplane flew past. I glanced at the airplane and noticed it looked gigantic compared to the small light I had been observing. When I looked back to find the white dot-like light in the sky, it had completely disappeared. I continued studying the sky for another 10 minutes, but there was nothing else to report. Well, when they say that it converted to a light, I guess the question is, was it a reflection of the sunlight or actual light? Yeah. And the fact that it wasn't like continuing to rise makes me think that it probably wasn't a balloon. Yeah, very cool sighting though. This sighting happened on August 22nd, 2025, 9:45 p.m. Duration 3 to 5 minutes. Observers 2. Location La Grande, Oregon. The large UFO was positioned well above the horizon, just below and to the left of the Big Dipper constellation. It says shaped disk, color bright lights, estimated size very large, viewed from land, direction from viewer northwest, angle of elevation 61 degrees, closest distance within 10 miles, estimated speed hovering, lights on object or haze around object. Large ring of bright lights hovering above La Grande, Oregon. My girlfriend and I were traveling from Union to La Grande, Oregon, when we noticed a large aircraft with very bright lights hovering directly above La Grande. As we approached the object on the highway, a mysterious fog seemed to come over us. The closer we got to the craft, the more quickly it began to fade away. It did not move at all during the entire time we observed it. It simply appeared to hover perfectly still, then gradually disappeared into the fog. The object looked like a large ring of extremely bright lights suspended in the sky. It remained stationary the entire time we witnessed it before fading from view. Isn't that neat? A ring of bright lights, almost one of these wheel-shaped UFOs where you see the individual lights along the rim of the wheel. This sighting happened on August 1st, 2025, 4:30 a.m. Duration approximately 1 hour. Observers 1. Location at Dant, Oregon. Location details campsite for overnight river rafting. Shape orb, size approximately the size of a suburban home. Viewed from land, direction from viewer east toward the sunrise. Angle of elevation 45 degrees, closest distance 1 to 5 miles for the larger object. Estimated speed at least the same speed as a meteor. Characteristics or haze around object, craft nearby, possible abduction. Clear, well-lit night sky with fast-moving orbs and two larger objects. After rafting from Trout Creek to Davison Flats, 3 friends and I set up camp, cooked some food, and went to sleep. I woke up from a vivid, lucid dream in which I was floating a few feet above the ground inside my tent and then being gently placed back down. When I woke, I almost immediately began seeing multiple meteors as there was an anticipated meteor shower that night. While tracking the movement of one meteor, I noticed it began to slow down, change direction, regain speed, and then move closer to a larger glowing light that I had assumed was a star or planet. Around this larger ball of light, I began to see many smaller, similar orbs seemingly swarming around it, with some peeling off in different directions. I quickly realized the larger glowing object was not a star or planet because it was also moving, though in a more controlled and less erratic way. It changed velocity and eventually came to a slow drift. I continued to observe this phenomena and witnessed more than 20 smaller orbs moving independently with no apparent pattern, although they seemed to focus their activity around the larger orb. The larger orb appeared to come closer, and that was when I began to make out more of its shape. What I saw looked similar to a spinning top. It appeared to have a disc-like middle with a small peak on top and a longer, thinner point on the bottom. Its core shape was a strong, bright light, surrounded by a hazy glow. The smaller orbs never seemed to come closer to my location. However, this larger upside-down top-shaped object appeared to be honing in on my location while still maintaining a distance of several miles. I wanted to grab my phone to record it, but it was stored in a dry bag somewhere inside a friend's tent. Regrettably, I did not want to disturb my friend because I was unsure whether what I was witnessing was even physically possible. I tried to reason that it could be something explainable, such as satellites or manned drones. However, with each passing moment, stranger things began to happen. A second larger orb began to rise from behind one of the canyon hillsides. At first, it appeared to be someone hiking over the hill to watch the sunrise, but then it continued to rise until it reached a similar height as the other objects. As it rose, some of the smaller orbs became what could only be described as aggressive, or at least they moved hastily toward these now two brighter objects. At one point, I witnessed a single orb peel away from the swarm and dart downward in an arc toward the ground, where it burst into a large flash of light that completely illuminated the night sky. At that point, I began to get out of my tent and considered walking to my friend so I could retrieve my phone, but I was so amazed and afraid of missing something that I decided a phone likely would not capture the strange event properly anyway. I witnessed this activity for what felt like over an hour. As the sun began to rise, the stars started to vanish in the morning light. The smaller orbs became too faint to see, but strangely, the larger orbs remained visibly bright even after all the stars directly above me had faded. The larger objects appeared to be moving only further away, not left or right. I stood and watched, waiting for one final movement, but eventually they disappeared like the smaller orbs. Whether it was due to the increasing daylight or deliberate evasion, I cannot say, but they suddenly seemed to be gone. I have no physical evidence, but this is a genuine witness statement. I am familiar with Starlink, other satellite movements, meteor activity, drones, and planes. None of these objects could move the way I saw them move. At times, the objects covered great distances across the night sky, especially the smaller orbs, and then came to impossible stops, sudden turns, or dramatic slowdowns. I hope this account is helpful in some way. Thank you for reading my statement. Well, thank you for posting it. Yeah, what a wild sighting. They talk about a possible abduction, and I don't know if that's just because of this sensation they had of floating above the ground. And they're not sure if that was a dream or them being returned. Definitely a candidate, I think, to be checked out for any kind of an implant. Very cool story. This sighting happened on July 29th, 2025, 9:30 p.m. Duration 10 seconds. Observers 1, Astoria, Oregon. Across the river above the mountains of on the Washington side, shape orb, color yellow light, size unknown, viewed from land, direction from viewer north, angle of elevation 45 degrees, closest distance approximately 1 mile, speed very slow, lights on object or haze around object. Yellow orb moving horizontally across the river. I was sitting on a bench on the Riverwalk with a girl talking while we waited for the meteor show to begin. It was around 9:30 p.m. Across the river on the Washington side, above the mountains, I saw a yellow orb with a yellow hue moving west in a completely horizontal path and at a very slow speed. As soon as I realized it was not a plane, satellite, drone, or meteor, it disappeared. 1 or maybe 2 seconds later, a very short distance further west, the light reappeared. Then, as if it had gone behind something, it disappeared again. I waited and waited for it to reappear somewhere else, but I could not find it. It was far too large and too slow to be a meteor. I cannot think of anything that behaves like that. I saw several satellites, helicopters, meteors, planes, and even a drone that night, and none of them came close to what this object did or looked like. We'll do 3 more here and wrap this up. This sighting happened March 18th, 2025. 8:20 p.m. local time. Duration a couple of minutes. Number observers 1. Location Eugene, Oregon. Between 6th and Tyler in the 5th alley. Shape rectangle. Color dark black. Estimated size pallet sized. So what, 3 foot by 4 foot maybe? Viewed from land. Direction from viewer. I was heading north and it was directly above my line of sight. Angle of elevation 75 degrees, approximately 200 feet off the ground. Did not appear to move. Possible explanation drone. Lights on object. Pallet-sized object hovering silently in the sky. On March 18th, 2025, between 6th and Tyler in the 5th alley, I walked out of a friend's apartment and headed north toward my car, which was parked on the right side just before the alley. I looked directly above me and saw a pallet-sized rectangular object hovering in place with no sound at all. Underneath it, I could see multiple rows of alternating green and blue lights. It looked completely out of place in the night sky. I could not accurately judge its height, only that it was well above the power lines running across the area. I watched it for about 2 minutes as it remained stationary, with the lights continuing to alternate. I reached for my phone to record it and realized I had left it inside the apartment. I ran back upstairs to get it, but by the time I returned, the object was gone. There was cloud cover visible, but no lights and no indication of where it could have gone. At first, I thought it might have been a Eugene police drone, but after doing some research, that seemed unlikely due to the size of the object and the complete lack of sound coming from it. Yeah, if it's that close and it's a drone, I'm pretty sure you're going to hear some noise coming off of it. Pallet size, though. Strange. This sighting happened January 24th, 2025, 12:30 a.m. local time. Says duration 3 nights in a row. Observers 1. Location Lincoln City, Oregon. Shape diamond. Color black and silver. Size unknown. Viewed from land. Direction from viewer west, southwest, and northwest. Angle of elevation 35 degrees, approximately 100 yards away. Speed fast. Characteristics: possible abduction. Marks found on body. They do have a picture of some marks, kind of like 3 little round marks in a triangle shape. It's weird. Multiple diamond-shaped craft observed over 3 nights. Over the course of 3 nights in a row, I experienced different events, each night slightly different from the last. On the night of January 24th, 2025, I was on the deck of a rented oceanfront condo facing the Pacific coast. I expressed to the universe that I was open to contact from a distance. I saw what may have been a shooting star or space debris. On January 25th, I woke up with a 3-dot triangular bruise on the underside of my left bicep. Okay, that's what the picture is. I have a photo, and then the photo's included there. That night, I again spoke to the universe about open contact and reflected on how beautiful Earth is, including its different places, weather, and natural beauty. Later that night, while looking south along the coastline through fog, I observed a close flyby approximately 100 yards off the coast, parallel to the beach and moving southbound. I believe it may have been two diamond-shaped craft with a flat black and gray-silver appearance. There was absolutely no sound. The sighting felt powerful and striking. About 25 minutes later, I observed two more diamond-shaped craft emerging from behind the condo, this time from my backside, moving very fast at a higher altitude, out over the ocean, in a northwest direction. I thanked them for what I had seen. On January 26, I went out onto the deck again and spoke to the universe, asking for a sign if I could be heard or seen. There was a faint twinkle in the southwestern sky over the ocean. My husband came outside, and I asked him if he was open to the idea of distant contact. He said yes. I asked the universe to show itself to him as well and told them he was open to contact. My husband and I began talking about our favorite places on Earth and how beautiful it all is. About 30 minutes later, I observed the objects again, this time approaching from the south and moving north along the coastline at a higher altitude and remaining visible for a longer period of time. I pointed them out multiple times, saying, "There it is," but my husband was unable to see them in time. It was an incredible experience. Well, I'm very interested in those marks on the bicep of this lady. That's strange. I don't know. She doesn't say anything about she thinks she may have had an abduction, but she doesn't say anything specifically about it. Yeah, people putting messages out to the universe. Sometimes I feel like that's kind of like a prey species putting out messages in the wilderness when there's predators about. I'm a little reluctant to think that that's a good idea, but yeah, thanks to her for sharing this really interesting sighting. We'll do one last one here. This last sighting happened on March 15th, 2024, 12:30 p.m. Duration 10 to 15 minutes. Observers 1 military. Location Springfield, Oregon. It flew directly over our farm, heading north-northwest. Shape sphere, color light burnt orange. Estimated size 30 to 50 foot diameter. Viewed from land. Direction from viewer east-southeast. Angle of elevation 45 degrees. Closest distance approximately 300 feet. Speed 50 miles per hour. Change to color. Large orange sphere observed over our farm. At approximately 12:30 p.m. on March 15th, 2024, I was sitting on my couch speaking to my dad on the phone when, in a completely unobstructed view, I saw a round object approximately 30 to 50 feet in diameter. It was a light burnt orange color and appeared to be flying around 200 to 300 feet above the ground. The object came from the south-southwest direction over the back of my property and entered my field of view as I was looking south. It was heading north-northwest at approximately 50 miles per hour. It was clearly visible in a cloudless sky over a wide-open 60-acre field directly across the road from me. I immediately went outside to record it using my Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus. While describing what I was seeing to my father, I noticed the object appearing light burnt orange, but at times it seemed to shift to bright white and then back again. I am unsure whether it was changing color or if sunlight was reflecting off its surface. It traveled on an upward angled trajectory, gradually increasing in elevation as it moved north to northeast. Once it reached approximately 7 to 8 miles away, it suddenly disappeared. However, a few seconds later, it reappeared about a mile or more to the left of its original flight path, still traveling in the same general direction. I was able to observe it for another minute or so before it moved out of sight. I was the only person home at the time. When I went back inside, I attempted to send a video to my father, but noticed that it was missing from my gallery. I checked my camera app and I found a message stating, "Video cannot be recorded while speaking on the phone." After finishing the call, I contacted my local law enforcement via the non-emergency line. They directed me to the county sheriff's department where I filed a report. I also contacted a local news station to see if anyone else had reported it. They told me that they were unable to act on such reports and were in a similar position as me. I then contacted the airport, which referred me to air traffic control. I reported the sighting to the control tower, and they advised me to contact the National UFO Reporting Center. I called NUFORC and reported the event, and they asked me to submit a written report, which I am now doing. It was the most thrilling and extraordinary experience I have witnessed. Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you to NUFORC for posting that. A lot of cool sightings there in Oregon. I hope you enjoyed the program today. If you did, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. It really helps the program out a lot. Until next time, this is UFO Warning. Over and out.